I felt then the Lord saying no to public school when I started praying about it again. We are in this massive community. It's very destructive. It's just not what it was when I was back in school. Our time is being taken away from being intentional with our children. This is the only childhood they get. You don't get that back.
Are you interested in innovative education and diversity in school models? Do you see a need for something different to bring about a reformation in our current education system? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss what's trending with unconventional learning models, including microschools, homeschool co-ops, creative learning centers, hybrid school models, and so much more. I am your host, Delina Wallace, president and founder of Wichita Innovative Schools and Educators, also known as WISE. This podcast, WISE and Otherwise, explores what our local hub of education entrepreneurs are doing in Wichita. We will also explore and offer brief introductions to the many local and national organizations that support innovation and education. Welcome to WISE and Otherwise. Hi, and welcome to another episode of WISE and Otherwise. Today, I have with me Alexa Munger from Recovering Roots Therapy. Alexa, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Delina.
Yeah. So I wanted to have Alexa on the show because she has a very unique perspective. Not only is she a mom of two young boys and has just recently been going through the process of trying to find the right fit for her son as he's entering kindergarten, but she also is constantly, hearing and interacting with young people and college students and teenagers and people who are currently in school. And your unique perspective is that you kind of hear how it's going for everybody. Mm-hmm. So I would love for you to share with us, first of all, just about your family and your own kids and your journey as you have looked for the best school for your son.
Yeah. So I have two boys, like Delina said. Colton is my oldest. He is 5, and Carter is my youngest. He is 3. So I never saw myself being a homeschooling mom. That was not the plan. That was not the agenda. I grew up going to public school from kindergarten to 18. My husband went to a private Christian school growing up. So we both figured that's what our children would do, one of those options. So when Colton was probably close to about 3, that's when the Lord really started to plant those seeds of, you're going to homeschool. You're going to homeschool. And I remember every single time I heard that, nope, that would get pushed off. That's not happening. I never saw myself being a homeschooling mom. And one of the biggest reasons was because I knew the Lord also called me to ministry when it comes to my job, when it comes to being a therapist. That was a very sought out God plan. And because I also did not see myself being a therapist either with my life, but this is where God wanted me to go. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, Lord, how in the world am I supposed to juggle being a therapist, which I know you have called me to be, and now also homeschooling. So Colton was about 3 when, like I said, he just kind of started planting those seeds, and we got to the age of 5 where I'm like, okay, this is it, Lord. Like, do I need to start finding curriculum? Do I need to start, what does this look like? And at that time, of course, I was working about 2-3 days a week. And so I couldn't commit to homeschooling full time. There was no way, unless of course I wanted to do like Saturdays and Sundays. And let's be honest, who wants to do Saturdays and Sundays of homeschooling? So I told the Lord, I said, you need to provide me an option. And we looked at some of the homeschooling co-ops that surrounded us. And I felt a big no. I felt a big discernment of the Lord saying no to those things. I felt then the Lord saying no to public school when I started praying about it again. And I said, Lord, you need to then give us another option, because this is not possible for us to do this full time. And that was April, May, June, sometime right before Colton turned 5. And it was 2 weeks later, I was on Facebook and someone shared this school called Rooted in Haven. And I became very curious about what it was. I've never heard of a micro school. I did not know what a micro school was. So the concept was very new to me. And long story short, I don't know how much more details you want here, Delina, but that, oh my goodness, 2 weeks later, trying to figure, his Colton turned 5 in September. We still had no clue what we were going to do. And then Rooted came along, and
Wow.
it was beautiful. It was perfect. And it's been everything we have needed for our son and our family.
That's amazing. I love to hear that story. I love to hear of God's faithfulness. You know, when he calls us to something, he's going to make a way. He's going to provide. And that's what I just really appreciated when you told me this story. I was like, you know what? This is exactly why I do what I do and help with these micro schools and these hybrid school options. Because when I hear of moms who say, you know, I feel like the Lord's calling me to homeschool, but I don't know how this is going to happen. And in your situation, you know, you're called into a ministry in addition to homeschooling. And it's like, it's not either or. And I think a lot of times, you know, and traditionally, like, to be honest, a lot of homeschool moms have been 100% fully devoted, and it's all homeschooling. And that's what they're called into. And they might not, they definitely wouldn't work. They wouldn't have a job. So in a way, that's really restrictive if you're thinking that that's the only way that you could possibly homeschool. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I know a lot of moms are in that situation. And I personally am like newly in this situation of working. I wasn't a working mom, you know, I homeschooled my kids for 10 to 12 years without doing any work outside of the home. And then I personally started to feel called into this exact work where I'm pouring into and investing in the hybrid schools and microschools. And just to share a little of my background, I haven't shared a lot with our listeners in the past with this, but like, I got to a point with homeschooling, with doing it that traditional way of just feeling like it's all on me. Like, I've got to do this. And I was, at least like, the Lord was gracious to direct me to like, well, you can start things that offer support for your family and for others. So I started a homeschool co-op. I started a micro school in my home, but then a lot of that burden was still on me, like as the director or as the micro school founder. And I'm like, well, this isn't helping. This is still this is a big lift. And so I really felt like and then I also started to get pretty discouraged with some things in our own homeschooling journey. And I was not seeing results that I was praying for. And I was really second guessing a lot of things and unsure if I would continue homeschooling. And we got to a point to where it was just evident that the best thing would be for our high schoolers, like our older kids, to attend a private school and not to homeschool them. And so, you know, there's just a lot. There are things that change. There are seasons in our lives as moms, and seasons in our family. And so I am so excited to hear that you found the right fit and you found exactly what you needed. Tell us what it's like now that you have found Rooted, and what's the schedule there? How does that help accommodate you with your work schedule?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I cannot praise them enough for what they do. The minute, I'm going to get emotional. The minute I dropped Colton off the very first day, I had just this overwhelming peace in my heart. And, you know, it's my firstborn. I'm still dropping him off at school. So of course there was the tears and, oh my goodness, you know, but driving away and leaving him there, I just knew without a doubt he was in good hands. I knew without a doubt, because Colton is such a sensitive kid. And that was one of my fears. He is a big feeler. His brain just, it just amazes me sometimes. And so having the type of one-on-one that they can give him in a smaller, structured way with Rooted is exactly what I needed for my son. And so Colton goes to Rooted Tuesdays and Wednesdays from about like 9 to 3:30, and that's when I work. I work Wednesdays all day, and so then I'm able to homeschool and be with my babies Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Mondays. And Colton has loved it. They just came home because they did an Easter learning curriculum, and they're following scripture, and I love that for him. And he came home with this massive, I don't even know how to describe it, but there was a rock and there was flowers and there was soil that they made and like a cross out of a tree, and the tomb is empty and has risen, and he comes home telling me the story of Jesus resurrecting. And I just know this is the best foundation that I could give for my son, of being surrounded by other believers where I know he is safe and being poured into with the biblical foundation, and then also being able to come alongside him and not miss his childhood either. I think the Lord also opened my heart in this as this is the only childhood they get. This is the only time you get to experience Colton at the age of 5, 6, 7. You don't get that back. And I can't even imagine now sending my kids to public school. Like, and once again, this is, like I said, this is a fit for our family, but I love being with my boys. Like on Thursday today, we went to the Wichita Zoo and we looked at animals, and, that was our education for our homeschooling today. And, now they're playing out in the dirt, but, so I just love being able to step into this role with them too and enjoy their childhood with them.
That's great. I'm so happy for you. And, it's difficult sometimes for moms to find the right option. And we don't have, so you and I, we live near the Hutchinson area. I'm outside of town, but we don't have a lot of options where we're at. So I'm so grateful for what Ella is doing there. And this is Rooted Academy, again, in Haven, Kansas. I've heard amazing things about it. I've been there several times myself and seen the kids there, seen the joy on their faces, seen them around the table, playing outside and in the kitchen. And, it's incredible. So, okay, let's contrast this a little bit or compare it to what you're seeing and what you're hearing and what you know about. How are kids in other situations who might not have this individualized and this Christian learning environment, how are they doing? And what are you seeing that's happening in schools today? Thanks again for listening to this episode of Wise and Otherwise. We'd like to ask you to take a minute and please rate and review our podcast so that others can learn more about us, and just to continue to show your support for this work that we're doing. It would mean so much. So please, if you're on Spotify or Apple or YouTube, take a minute and give us a good review.
Yeah. So I also work with a lot of teachers and administrators in the school systems, in the public school systems. And just even this week, I had one in my office, and she was talking to me about how kids today are just craving attention. They're craving attention from their parents. And, I truly believe that it's a social media issue. I think us as adults, it's not even a kid issue. I think it's also an adult issue where we are, constantly on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram and posting things and trying to be included in different Facebook groups. And so our time is being taken away from being intentional with our children, and our children are watching that. And now, well, my mom and dad view this as a priority, so now I'm going to view it as a priority. And so, we see an increase of teens getting Snapchat and Instagram and all of these things. And we know the statistics behind it, that there's higher risk for eating disorders and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and depression because of the comparison. It's not real. It's just, we were also not meant to live in a community this big. When we look at Jesus's community, it was made up of most consistently about 12 to 20 people, right, who followed him. That's all. That's as much as we can care for. But now we are in this massive community of people from California and Florida and Minnesota. And family-wise, is it great? Yes. And I see so many teenagers where they'll come in and they're friends with like everybody in Kansas. They're friends with like people in Wichita schools and Little River and all of these. I'm like, how do you know these people? And they really don't. But the community then to stay caught up with the groups is way too overwhelming. And so number one is there's just an increase in needing time and attention from parents.
Mm-hmm.
And parents, of course, are busy too. And then, so now we're looking for that time and attention from our peers, and our peers, they're all getting it from social media and the comparison and what they really think reality is. And it's just, they have nowhere to turn to. They
Yeah.
have nowhere to turn to. And it's very destructive. And I hear teachers getting very burnt out. Like I said, they're all saying that these children, it's just not what it was when I was back in school.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so to your point about the smaller community and just having that attention, not only is it a smaller learning environment there at Rooted Academy, because how many students do they have?
I want to say 10 to 15.
Yeah, a pretty small little group there. And they do all their learning together. It's like a one-room schoolhouse. It's in her home. It's incredible. And so they're getting that attention from the teachers who are there. And then they also, because of the model, because it's a hybrid model and part-time school, then they have the attention of their mom and dad. They have the homeschooling thing. So I really love that model. Do you have anything else that you've noticed just regarding public schools or any concerns with the environment that's happening there, or any word of caution to families? If maybe, I imagine there's going to be some moms out there who are feeling a little bit unsettled and just unrest. Like you mentioned, when you were seeking other options, it was unsettling and you felt this strong, no, that's not the way.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to the moms who might have that feeling inside, and how could you advise them?
Yeah. So when Clark and I were praying, Clark's my husband, we're praying about this decision. A lot of it came back to that our son, at least I can only speak for Colton, is that he is not a missionary yet. Like when we think about Jesus, he even went off on his own to pray and meditate and for the Lord to prepare him for what was coming. And so now throwing a 5-year-old into the world, they don't have the language, they don't have the understanding. But this is the contrast. I go then to Timothy, where it says, do not let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for purity and love and all of these things. And so absolutely, can kids be disciples? Yes. And it's more so where they can be a disciple whenever the Lord calls them to, at 5, 6, and 7. But it's my job as a parent to have that discernment of where and when. Not they're going to be a disciple from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., 5 days a week in a school that I have absolutely no idea what's going on there. And I'm being able to prepare them in such a limited time than at home on the weekends. And so it's kind of like a give and a take. We prepare, we disciple, we hope it sticks within their heart, and then we slowly expose them to kids on the playground or whatever. I'm thinking of a 5-year-old right now, so I'm like, what am I going to hold into? But because we don't want to take all of Christian children and just segregate them, and because there is so much influence that can happen in a public school with children, and a 5-year-old and asking another 5-year-old, hey, come to my church, kind of a thing. Yes, and we just need to enter into it very carefully, because in my personal opinion, my 5-year-old is not a dead set, strong missionary yet. And I get to discern where he kind of gets to be a missionary at this age.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think of the life of Jesus, and he didn't even enter his ministry until he was in his 30s. And it's so, yeah, very, very interesting perspective there. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm so happy to hear that you have enjoyed Rooted Life.
it's Rooted Academy. We also have a Rooted Life Academy that's up in the Kansas City area, but Rooted Academy in Haven. So I'm very happy. Thank you for telling us your story. I appreciate just that example of being a homeschooling mom and doing what God's called you to do. And it's both things. You are in ministry as a therapist, and you're ministering to God's people in that way. It's a gift, and it's something that he's called you to specifically. And in addition to that, homeschooling. And I love that it's made possible because of these types of hybrid schools.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll let you get back to your day with your kids and enjoy doing the mom thing and go play with your boys in the dirt.
If I could really quick, Delina, I would love to get a selfless plug towards Ella Peters, if that's okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
If anyone is thinking about Rooted at all, or just a microschool, this happened just this week. This is just who Ella's character is. So my husband picks up Colton from school, and we always have our youngest son, Carter. And Carter, he's excited. He wants to play with the other kids. So he's off running, and Colton's an introvert. And so Colton always needs, like, after school, he goes straight to the truck to just water, get a snack, and calm down. And it's like, Ella's been with my son now for 2 days, and still Clark is out there with Carter playing. Ella walks over to Colton in the truck and just continues to have a conversation with him about what, I don't know, maybe checking on him, maybe she was just loving on him, which I really think that's what it was. But that's just, even though Ella's been with my son for 2 days now, she still just intentionally goes and checks and loves on these children in such a wonderful way. So
that's great. That's great. She's pretty amazing. So okay. Well, thanks again for being on the show. And to any of our listeners who want to learn more about some of the microschools that we have, you can go to heartlandhero.org and look. We have a directory of some microschools in Kansas, and hopefully, prayerfully, that list will be growing. So thanks, Alexa. Have a great day.
Thanks, Delina. You too.